Industry specificity as a factor differentiating employment effects in special economic zones firms. Marlena CICHA-NAZARCZUK. Motives for undertaking the study. The importance of Sezs as a tool of economic policy. State aid provided to businesses within special economic zones is an important economic policy tool for many countries. By offering tax and regulatory preferences and infrastructure support, zones attract both domestic and foreign investment, creating favorable conditions for business development. These tools were created to accelerate economic development, international trade, innovation, and industrialization. Their main goal is to promote regional development by, among other things, building infrastructure and generating new jobs. Controversy over the effectiveness of Sezs. There is a lot of controversy in the literature about the effectiveness of these instruments, especially in the context of differential employment effects. The lack of consensus on whether the zones contribute to solving problems in the labor market is explained by the variety of incentives used under the program, the different socio-economic contexts in which the zones operate, and the research approach for evaluating the effects of the interventions undertaken. Research gap. Heterogeneity of firms. Existing research does not adequately account for the heterogeneity of firms receiving public assistance, especially in terms of industry differences. In practice, this means that potentially important variables that can differentiate program effects are being overlooked. Understanding the role of industry in shaping employment effects can provide important guidance for policymakers who are developing investment support policies and seeking to more effectively assist businesses in regions in need of special intervention. The need for firm-level analysis. In the national literature, most of the analyses attempting to identify employment effects in Sezs have been conducted on a regional basis considering counties or municipalities. Few works have identified firm-level effects. This should probably be linked to the low availability of microdata and the high cost of obtaining it. At the same time, it should be emphasized that firm-level analysis is currently the most rapidly growing area of research. Purpose of the study. The primary objective of the study is to determine whether and to what extent industry can affect the variation in employment effects among firms receiving state aid in Sezs in Poland. The approach is in line with recent trends in the world literature that take up and develop the concepts of heterogeneity of firms in many areas of the economy. Materials and methods. Given the heterogeneous nature of Sezs-supported firms, failure to account for the effects of the factors that determine their heterogeneity may lead to erroneous conclusions about the impact of the program, including its impact on job creation in firms. Therefore, in studying the impact of public programs on the economy, it is reasonable to use a counterfactual approach based on a controlled observational experiment that compares two study groups. An experimental group that is subject to the program support intervention and a control group that is not subject to the intervention. The analysis used a combination of PSM with a kernel-based estimator and the difference-in-difference method to estimate the effects of Sezs on employment changes in zoned firms, taking into account the weight of observations based on their propensity. In this context, the following formula was used. Data and scope of the analysis. The analysis used data on 7,834 firms in Poland, for which contact, financial, registration and employment information was obtained from 2007 to 2014. Despite the large number of observations, 62,672, the dataset contained numerous absence of data, which limited the number of observations available for estimation. Particular difficulties were encountered with the variable describing the size of employment in firms. For this reason, the selection of the period of analysis was limited to 2007 to 2012. It is worth noting that the purpose of the study was not to determine the effects of the program but to determine whether industries differentiate these effects, making the timeliness of the data not crucial. The selection of variables for the counterfactual analysis, taking into account the factors affecting the size of the firm's workforce, was based on the results of several regressions with different specifications, OLS, FE, RE. The following variables were finally used in the analysis. Results. Identification of the Sezs program's impact on employment by PKD subsection shows that employment effects varied by industry. Statistically significant and positive results were observed in firms in two subsections: food, beverage and tobacco products manufacturing and transportation equipment manufacturing. From 2007 to 2012, Sezs firms in these subsections showed significantly higher employment gains compared to non-Sezs firms with similar characteristics. The transportation equipment manufacturing (DM) subsection covers the broader automotive industry, which has been an important part of the Polish economy for years, being a key employer and a pillar of exports. It has attracted the most zone investments and generated the largest capital expenditures. Automotive firms, mainly through investments by multinationals, also generated the largest employment in the zones. However, this industry was particularly sensitive to economic fluctuations, especially after the 2008 global financial crisis. The net employment effect of Sezs in this industry was more than 50%, meaning that Sezs investors generated 53% more jobs than entrepreneurs in the control group. It should be borne in mind, of course, that this effect could result from the need to meet the declared level of employment, regardless of the difficult economic conditions. Indeed, failure to meet these conditions risked revocation of the zone's business permit. A similar situation can be observed in the food, beverage and tobacco (DA) industry. During the period under review, the control group saw a decrease in employment, while there was an increase among the zone entities. This industry, due to its role in the economy, was less exposed to the effects of the global financial crisis. In addition, during this period Poland joined the EU common market, which was conducive to the acquisition of firms by foreign capital. The tax exemption in Sezs was an important factor supporting the development of these firms, enabling them to obtain additional benefits from locating their operations in Sezs. For the other PKD subsections, the results were not statistically significant. Conclusions. The purpose of the study was to determine whether and to what extent the industry can affect the differential employment effects of firms receiving state aid in Sezs in Poland. The results of firm-level estimations showed differential employment effects of Sezs depending on the subsection of economic activity. Positive and statistically significant net effects were identified in two subsections: food, beverage and tobacco products manufacturing (DA) and transportation equipment manufacturing (DM). The results suggest that industry, as one of the dimensions of the heterogeneity of business entities, can have a significant impact on differentiating the effectiveness of public support. Therefore, further research seems warranted to tailor this type of support to the specific needs of individual sectors or industries in the economy. Tailoring support to the specific needs and potential of different industries would allow more efficient use of available resources, resulting in more jobs, stimulating innovation and improving productivity. For example, focusing support on key industries, such as technology or renewable energy sources, could increase the competitiveness of the Polish economy. In addition, a variety of forms of intervention, taking into account the specifics of local labor markets and regional needs, would promote sustainable development. The results presented provide a solid basis for continued research and identification of factors that may affect the differential employment effects of public support under the current policy of supporting new investments in Poland. In addition, it is suggested that public assistance interventions should be evaluated not only at the national level, but also at the regional, local and firm level, taking into account the heterogeneous nature of these categories. This is because the heterogeneity of economic entities may be a key factor in the differences in the effects of interventions. In turn, the method presented in the article for identifying these effects may be useful in future evaluations of intervention activities. Thank you for your time and attention.